Is the PlayStation Portal actually worth buying if you don't have PlayStation Plus Premium? I let my PlayStation Plus Premium subscription expire on purpose, not because I'm done with it, but because I wanted to properly experience what the PlayStation Portal feels like without PlayStation Plus Premium in 2026. Once it expired, I then just carried on using the portal exactly as I normally would for the past week. No changes in routine, no change in how often I picked it up. I just used it the way I always do. And pretty quickly, I realized whether this device still feels worth it without premium depends entirely on how you actually use it. Because for some setups, nothing really changes. For others, it changes a lot. And that's the part people don't always think through when they're deciding whether the portal or the subscription is worth the money long term. If you're thinking about buying a portal or you're debating whether to keep premium active, this is probably worth hearing. Let's start with what you actually get when premium is active, because I think this is where the portal feels at its strongest. When you've got premium, the portal doesn't just feel like a screen that mirrors your PS5, it feels like a cloud gaming device in its own right. I could stream PS5 games that I'd purchased digitally directly from Sony servers, I could jump into titles from the PlayStation Plus catalogue, and I didn't even need my PS5 switched on at home. Now, technically, and this is something people sometimes forget, in regions where cloud streaming is supported, you don't even need to own a PS5 at all. You could buy a portal, subscribe to premium, and stream everything directly from the cloud. That does depend on where you live, because cloud gaming isn't available everywhere yet, so that advantage isn't universal, but in places where it is supported, the flexibility is very real and very dependent on good internet. Like everything is with the portal, you need good internet, no matter what, for the portal to be a good experience. And I'll be honest, the cloud performance has been really impressive for me. In some situations, it has actually felt more consistent than remote play. When you remote play, you're relying on your home setup and your PS5 being in rest mode. When you stream from the cloud, you're relying on Sony's infrastructure instead, and that often feels a little more stable and sharper, which is so weird to me, as you would think remote play would be better performing than connecting to some Sony server miles away. But there's another benefit that I think is even more important, and I don't hear many people talking about it. When you're using remote play, your PS5 is actively being used. It's effectively tied up, so if you're gaming on the portal through remote play, nobody else in the house can jump on that console at the same time. With cloud gaming though, your PS5 isn't involved at all, it's completely free. So there were times where I was playing something on the cloud on my portal and someone else can log in their account on the actual console, and they can, watch TV or Netflix, or if you have another gamer in the house, they can play something else on that PlayStation with their PlayStation Network account. And if you share your PlayStation with your partner or kids, that suddenly makes the portal feel like a second system in the house rather than a remote play companion screen. That's a huge difference, which people often overlook in my opinion. Now here's where things got interesting for me. The moment premium expired, I noticed something slightly uncomfortable about my own game library. I don't buy many digital games. If I can get something physically, I always buy it on disc. So most of my digital collection actually comes from PlayStation Plus monthly games, extra titles, premium catalogue stuff. And when my subscription ended, all of those titles were still sitting there in my library, but now they had a little PlayStation Plus symbol with a padlock on them. When I clicked them, they didn't launch. They sent me right to the store asking me either to buy the game outright or resubscribe. And that's when I realized something. If most of your digital library is built through subscriptions, Then the moment that subscription disappears, so does most of what you thought you had access to. Visually, nothing had changed. My library still looked absolutely jam-packed full of games. Functionally though, a big chunk of it was no longer playable. I just couldn't access them. That was the first moment where the Portal experience felt noticeably different. Without Premium, the Portal becomes purely a remote play device again. You can still play games you've bought physically as long as the disc is in your PS5. You can still play games you've purchased digitally outright. You can still remote play anything installed on your console. And to be clear, remote play still works really well. If you own a PS5 and you've built up a solid collection of games over time, the Portal is still a brilliant backlog busting tool. It still lets you play on the sofa while someone else watches the TV, or in bed at night, or just squeeze gaming into moments you normally wouldn't be able to. However, if you are mainly playing physical games, there is a convenience trade-off that becomes a lot more obvious without Premium. If you're playing through your physical backlog via remote play and you decide you want to switch games, you have to physically go over to your PlayStation 5 and change the disc. There's no way around that. Now, if you're just at home sitting on the sofa, that's not really a problem. In fact, it's probably quite good for you to get up and move about every now and then in between gaming sessions. But this becomes a real limitation if you're away from home. If you're traveling or staying somewhere else and you've left a disc in your PS5, that's the game you're stuck with until you get back. You can't remotely change discs. That's where Premium adds a layer of convenience. With cloud gaming or with digital games you own or games from the PlayStation Plus catalogue, you can switch between titles instantly. 1 minute you're playing one game, the next minute something completely different wherever you are. Now I want to be clear here because this is important to me personally. I still prefer owning my games physically whenever I can. I like having the disc. I like knowing I actually own it. I can lend it to friends, pass it on to family in the future, sell it if I want to, or just keep it on the shelf. It can't be taken away from me and it isn't tied to an account. That matters a lot to me. But I also think PlayStation Plus Premium works really well as an optional extra on top of that. For me, it's not a case of being all digital or all physical. It's about having options. Big games I care about, I buy physically and own forever. Everything else, games I want to dip into, test out or switch between quickly. Premium makes that far more convenient, especially on the Portal. And that convenience is a big part of what makes the Portal feel more versatile, easy to use, and honestly, just a more fun device. But the difference now is that everything depends on that PlayStation 5. If it's turned off, you can't connect. If your internet upload isn't stable, you'll feel it. And if someone else wants to use the console while you're playing, you need to coordinate. And here's the bigger thing that I think people need to understand. If you don't own a PS5 and you're relying on Premium for your cloud gaming subscription and that expires, the Portal doesn't really have anything to connect to. It's no longer an independent standalone device. It will be able to play absolutely nothing, which is a downside of relying entirely on a subscription service for all your gaming. That's why I always see Premium as a great nice to have, an added extra, but not something I'd want to rely on as my only way to play games. You never really own anything and you're locked into paying ever increasing prices just to keep access. Now, for some people, that's not necessarily a deal breaker, but it is a commitment. Subscription prices don't tend to go down over time. So if the Portal is your only PlayStation device, you're effectively committing to keeping that subscription active long term while you want to game on the Portal. There was another thing here I wanted to test properly. Free-to-play games still work perfectly fine through remote play. You can launch them and play them online without needing PlayStation Plus, but paid multiplayer games are different. If you don't have PlayStation Plus at all, you can't access online multiplayer in paid titles. So something like GTA 5 Online, even if you own it physically or digitally, like me, I own it both ways, physically and digitally, it won't let you play online without a subscription. So even if cloud gaming isn't important to you, losing PlayStation Plus still affects certain types of games in a big way. You could own PlayStation Plus Essential, then play these games online via remote play through your PS5 onto your portal. That would save you some money. But again, with cloud gaming, you're locked into premium if you're relying on the cloud for all your gaming on the PlayStation portal. After using the portal both ways, I think the real difference isn't whether it works without premium. It absolutely does, as long as you own a PlayStation 5. The real difference is how it feels. With premium active, the portal feels really like an independent standalone device. It feels flexible, it feels like you've got options. Without premium, it still works, but it feels more like an extension of your console. You know, it's tied to your PS5. If you buy most of your games physically, like I do, and you already own a PlayStation 5, you'll probably be perfectly happy without premium. But if you rely heavily on subscription games, or you share your console with other people in the house, or you just like that untethered flexibility, premium genuinely elevates the PlayStation Portal experience up to another level. So is the PlayStation Portal worth it without PlayStation Plus Premium? Yes, if you already own a PS5 console and you're building your own library of games outside of PlayStation Plus subscriptions, but if you want the portal to feel like a second system in your house rather than just a remote screen, premium makes a noticeable difference. For me personally, I think the portal shines brightest with premium active. It removes friction and adds loads of flexibility to how you play the device, but I also completely understand not wanting another expensive subscription in your life. And I think that's where the real decision lies. And if you are going for PlayStation Plus Premium and want to save some money and get your subscription a lot cheaper than what the normal price is, check out this video on screen where I show you step by step how I get PlayStation Plus Premium cheaper every single year.